Padakamalang Sri Gurun Vaishnavanscha Sri Rupam Chakrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tvam Sadivam Sadaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sadhana Lalita Sri Vishakhanitanscha Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaurabhakta Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaurabhakta Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaurabhakta Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Madhava Punya Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Bihari, Yashodanandana Brajana Ranjana, Yashodanandana Brajana Ranjana, Jamuna Tira Banachari, Jamuna Tira Banachari, Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Bihari, Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari, Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari, Yasodhanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tiro Vanachari Yamuna Tiro Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Punyabhari Jaya Radha Madhava Punyabhari Jaya Paramahansa Paribhajaracharya Sakhareshwara Smada Pradiptam Saraswati Goswami Bhagavad Jaya Nanda Gauri Vaishnava Ki Jaya Ramacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jaya Names of the whole Sri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakti Jaya Shri Radha Krishna Bhogavna Sam Kanda Radha Kanda Jaya Ki Jaya Vrindavan Dham Ki Jaya Navadvip Dham Ki Jaya Ganga Mai Ki Jai, Jamuna Mai Ki Jai, Guru Dwarka Dhan Ki Jai, Swami Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai, all glories to His name, all glories to His name.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Please unmute yourself. Hare Krishna Maharaj. Humble obeisances. Hare Krishna. Yes. You are welcome to our platform today. So we can start the class, please.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Please accept my humble obeisance and thank you very much to invite me on this Zoom session.
Thank you, Maharaj.
So we have a verse for us from the Canto 1 Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 6, verse number 16. Nam Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. Let's fix this little thing here. Hare Krishna. Did you read already the verse or shall I read it?
You read.
Okay. Dayatas charanambojam bhava nidita cetasa au kantasru kalakshasya ridyasin me sanair hari. So, as soon as I began to meditate upon the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead with my mind, transformed in transcendental love, tears rolled down my eyes, and without delay, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, appeared on the lotus of my heart. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The word Bhava is significant here. This Bhava stage is attained after one has transcendental affection for the Lord. The first initial stage is called Shraddha, or liking for the Supreme Lord. In order to increase that liking to associate with pure devotees of the Lord, the third stage is to practice the prescribed rules and regulations of devotional service. This will dissipate all sorts of misgivings and remove all personal deficiencies that hamper the process in devotional service. When all misgivings and personal deficiencies are removed, there's a standard faith in transcendental matter, and the taste for it increases in greater proportion. This stage leads to attraction, and after this there is bhava, or the prior stage of unalloyed love for God. All the above different stages are but different stages of development of transcendent love. Being so surcharged with transcendent love, there comes a strong feeling of separation, which leads to 8 different kinds of ecstasies. Tears from the eyes of a devotee is an automatic reaction, and because Srila Radha Muni in his previous birth attained that stage very quickly, after his departure from home, it was quite possible for him to perceive the actual presence by his developed spiritual senses without material tinge. Gnanana Shlakaya Chaturmritam Yanatasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manovishtam Stapitamila Bhutale Swayam Rupa Ramayam Dadati Swaparantikam. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Radha Sri Vasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Ram Ram. So here we find that the devotee attained immediately a high level of spiritual realization because Narad, he was a devotee in his previous life. It is interesting, although in previous life he was already on a high platform, he actually did not go back to Godhead yet. He comes another time for the sake of preaching. And so in the same way, we being low-born, shouldn't think ourselves in any other way, not elevated. Our, what is it called? Our, the word for it, I can't remember right now. Our status at the beginning of our lives is not exactly high. But still, by Srila Prabhupada's mercy, we have come to serve Krishna in Krishna's consciousness. Srila Prabhupada was very clear about it. He told different people, including myself, at one stage that I've created you good fortune. There's a verse in the Bhagavad Gita, which is actually coming from Bhagavatam. And in this verse, it says that one who chants the holy name of Krishna, he has taken birth in all the holy rivers of India. He's visited all the places of pilgrimage in India. So I was translating Bhagavad Gita at that time, 1973, into the German language, together with Sachidanand Swami and Bhakti, at that time Vedavyas Prabhu, now Bhakti Gauravani Maharaj. And so Prabhupada was very pleased. We gave him the Bhagavad Gita in his room in Calcutta. He had a room there. And so I asked him at that time, Srila Prabhupada, it says here that one who is coming to Krishna consciousness in his previous life, he has taken bath in all the holy rivers of India, visited all the places of pilgrimage. Does it mean, I said, does it mean it refers to me also? That in my previous life, I've been born in India. Now, this was, of course, a good question, but we should remember that these verses are spoken to people who actually live in India, because we cannot claim this sort of heritage that we are born in India and now we have taken birth in Western countries. And so Prabhupada, he smiled when I said that, and then he said to me in a very fatherly voice that actually I have created you good fortune. And that is our situation, that without Prabhupada going all over the world, even Africa, he came to Kenya, and so many places that are not so much frequented in generally. Still, he showered his mercy everywhere. And he he saw the soul in all creatures. This is a vision of a person who's learned. Vidya Vinay Sampani Brahmini Gavyashti Shuri Chavashra Pagicha Pandita Samadashinaha. It's one who sees the soul in all creatures, whether they're in the body of an elephant, a cow, a human being, a demigod. He is called a Pandit, learned. And if people do not see the soul in other creatures, then that means they are uneducated. So Prabhupada wrote in Back to Godhead magazine 1944, he wrote, unless the soul is seen in any creature, the dual frenzy of love and hate will go on forever and people will never see peace. These are very strong words he used. Unless the soul is seen in all creatures. And that is actually our situation, that we see the soul. In Buddhism, there's literally no concept of soul. In Christianity, Muslim religion, in the Abrahamic religions, because they're all Muslim religion, Christian religion, Jewish religion, is all based on Abraham, on the original Testament, the Old Testament. And in Abrahamic religiosity, there's no defined concept of soul. Consequently, because there's no clear understanding of soul, you can ask anybody with an Abrahamic background, Christian, Muslim, or Jewish, why on earth are innocent people suffering in this world? Why on earth? What is the answer? Answer my question. Should tell them, answer my question. Why is it? So many children are being murdered, or die in war, or die in genocide. My question was raised like this when I was young. I was 12 years old. Where is God in the suffering of the world? Where is he? Is he partial? That he's kind to some and not kind to others? This is not God. Krishna says, I'm not partial, I'm equal to all, and whoever renders service to me is a friend, and I'm in him and he's in me. That's what Krishna said, and that sounds like God, that I'm equal to everyone. Yet if you look at the material world, there's so much injustice and cruelty, all in the presence of a benign, well-wishing, benign, and kind God. How is it possible? You cannot understand, you cannot answer this question unless you understand that as embodied soul, the soul is embodied. In this body, it travels from childhood to youthhood to old age. In the same way, the soul takes another body again. We have been traveling in the material world since time immemorial. And Krishna says, even never was a time that I did not exist, nor you. Nor will there be a time that we will cease to be. So since time immemorial, never has a time. We have always been, we always are, and we always will be. And therefore, there's a previous life. The soul, when the soul comes into the material world, is in a difficult situation because on one hand, the soul is eternal, but she has to take shelter in a material body, which is just like a suit, a space suit, suitable to this earthly atmosphere. The problem is for the soul, that the soul is eternal and that the suit is not lasting very long. That's the problem right there. Just like, for example, if we were to give a shirt that lasts only a very short time, what is the use of it? So in the same way, this problem of the soul is that the soul is eternal and she accepts a material body and that body dies, and so she has to take another body as long as she is in material consciousness. There's no way out of it. And so in these different forms, the soul suffers and enjoys the reactions of his previous life under the control of God. It's not that God is just looking away. that he's looking elsewhere, no under the control. Diabetes, what is this verse? Not diabetes, Kamana Devanechina. Under the Devanechina, under my control, everybody suffers and enjoys his own karma. But people in Western type of religiosity, they're propounding the mythos, the myth of innocence. It's a myth. There's no reality to it. It's mythology. It's just wishful thinking. There's only one life. Like the ostrich in Australia, when the hunter comes, he sticks his head in the ground. He doesn't want to see the inevitable destruction. So in the same way, when it comes to knowledge, people bury their head into the ground. We can explain to them immediately why the innocent suffer. Yesterday showed to one of the devotees, I'm in Africa, by the way. No, I'm in South India right now, and I showed to one devotee one film. After the tsunami, so many people died. And a 7-year-old girl was invited to speak on a teleconference in Rome. And she asked the Pope of Rome, Father, you know God, why is it that all my friends are dead? How does God allow this? And his answer was, I thought the same thing. And we must admit there is no answer. If you don't have an answer, what are you the Pope for? He is head of the 3 billion largest community, religious community in the world. He should know. But you cannot know unless you understand the nature of the soul. The soul is eternal. Actually, talking about Christianity, the concept of the previous existence, the pre-existence of the soul, was condemned in the Council of, what was it, Constantinople in the year 530 AD. And the edict, judging sentence of the church at that time was, he who believes in the pre-existence of the soul is condemned. According to that logic, Krishna, Vyasadeva, Narada Muni, Srila Prabhupada, all of us, you're all going to hell because you believe in the pre-existence of the soul. How can that be? How can that be? All the sages, since time immemorial, Krishna's words are eternal. Since time immemorial, eternal times, Krishna propounds the idea, which is the only idea that is realistic, namely that the soul is eternal. And that therefore, if we suffer, if we have a fate of suffering, we should understand that fate is never casual, that means accidental, nor is fate unfair, unjust. Neither accidental nor unjust. It is 100% just. 100%. All the things and all the evil things you do in a previous life, sufferings you or me incur on others, that's emotional pain and that physical pain we impose on somebody else, that will come back to us in a future life. We'll have to suffer all the emotional pain and the material pain we cause to other living entities. And that's why people suffer. So people are wondering, they're ending up in genocide situation or even concentration camps. And they're so hurt because they say, how is it possible that we are unjustly treated? You see, if you're unjustly treated, that is hurting more than anything else. You know, my father, he was in a concentration camp in Germany. And after as a victim, and after the concentration camp in the year about 55, 58 or so, the German government began to pay reparations for those who had been how we say, innocently punished by the German government. And so when he wouldn't get his claim from the government, so he went to court to claim this claim. And the judges, there were 3 judges, they laughed at him. They said, Mr. Brinkman, that's the name of my father, don't you remember us? And he realized that these were the same people that put him actually into the concentration camp. They just had changed their clothes. And he said that was more suffering for him, the pain of this insult. They added insult to injury than so much pain he experienced before on a physical platform. So we should understand that if we do not have a proper concept, a defined concept of soul, then we cannot understand why the innocent suffer. The truth is, nobody in this world is innocent, not even a child. That's the truth, not even a child. If the child is suffering, we cannot understand it. But if he would go into the previous, if he were to be able to cross the threshold that separates us from the previous life, the threshold of death and birth, that's the threshold, like you have a threshold on a door, between inside and outside, there's a threshold. If he were able to cross the threshold of birth and death, we would clearly understand why is it that this girl has to suffer. Or why is it that this boy has to suffer, although he was innocent as a child? He was not innocent. Nobody's innocent in this world. So we have a huge advantage of knowledge. If you don't understand that everybody is suffering the reactions of his own deeds, it means you have no knowledge. If you think that you should love Jesus, but not Krishna, that means you have no knowledge. If you love Jesus, you must love Krishna. If you love Krishna, you must love Jesus. If you understand Jesus, you can understand Krishna. And if you understand Krishna, you can understand Jesus. And if you say, I don't want to love Krishna, I want to love only Jesus, that means you have no knowledge. As simple as that. You don't understand. And there's a relationship between father and son. And so by the end of the day, it comes down to knowledge. In the material world, people are in ignorance, and therefore we have our prayer to Srila Prabhupada. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Umritamina Tasmai Sri Gurave Namah. Worship my spiritual master because he saved me with a bright light of knowledge from the darkness born of ignorance. That's the thing. Religion has to be reasonable. It has to be reasonable. It is not reasonable to think that a God who is benign, that means a well-wisher, benign, equal to everyone, compassionate, allows innocent people to suffer, or animals being slaughtered by the millions. This is all due to karma. Prabhupada, one time on a morning walk, he saw a picture. What is it called? JFK, JFC, Colonel Sanders' chicken, whatever it is. Colonel Sanders. And he said, this man is selling chicken, fried chicken in his chains. He said, for every chicken that was killed in his chain, he has to get birth. Millions and millions and millions of times. Therefore, naturally, people who understand that everything by the end of the day boils down to karma, what happens here? There's a noise there, a ticking noise. Yeah. So everyone who understands this, he has a future, because he can explain to his children why it is, and he will be very careful what he does in this life, because he knows people live a reckless life because they think there's no reaction. Let me enjoy now. Shavakya Muni said, "Ghee, get ghee," because tomorrow there's no life anymore. You're dead. There's no life after death. This is all due to the fallacy that there's only one life. If you propagate the idea that there's only one life, that means you have no knowledge. As simple as that. And if you don't believe in a previous existence, that means you have no knowledge. And if you think the law of karma is not existing, you have no knowledge. And if you think that the world is unjust, that means you have no knowledge. And if you think you can exploit other people, exploit the environment, exploit the rivers, exploit the oceans, the air, the forests, animals, other living beings, it means you have no knowledge. That's what it comes down to. All the vices in this world are only there because people have no knowledge. That's the point. They're not knowledgeable, and therefore they do as they like. Burning the forest, killing animals, because they have no knowledge. They're ignorant. How ignorant? Ignorant like animals. Animals also don't understand the soul. They have no concept of justice. They have no concept of reincarnation. So if we do not have this understanding, that means we maybe even highly place religious personality in a religious hierarchy, but we don't have deep knowledge of the soul. Consequently, if you don't have knowledge of the soul, you don't have knowledge of God. It goes together. Self-realization, God-realization is one and the same. If you realize the self in its glory, you realize the self as a part of God. It is an expansion. We all are. Whether we are in the spiritual world, whether we are in the material world, we are all amsa, means parts and parcels of God. What is my vamsho? Oh, I'm getting old sometimes. That all living entities are my parts and parcels. That is the situation. And the part is eternal as much as the whole is eternal. I was discussing with one devotee here recently that there's one verse in Srimad Bhagavatam where Krishna explains that if a person in distress, then the enlightened person understands that God has come to me in the form of distress to purify me from my material affinity. It is God. Like when Prabhupada died, when he left his body, he said, everything moving and non-moving, there's nothing but Krishna. This consciousness is called Krishna consciousness. So Krishna appears to us in the form of distress. Why? To purify us from our material affinity, means attachment. But the point is that in the ultimate issue, since we are part and parcels of one living being, expansions, that is the verse, and I couldn't remember. So since we are part of the same human being, transcendental being, therefore, Prabhupada says in the ultimate analysis, there's only one being existing in the spiritual world or in the material world. And that one being is Krishna. There's only one being, actually, one living being. And not many living beings. We are all just expansions of that one living being. I found that thought really fascinating. When you think about it, there's only one being in all the worlds. And that being expands himself in so many Vishnu Tattvas, first of all, and then furthermore into Jiva Tattva. And then even into the material energy, being one of the energies of God. And so everything, that's why it says in this one verse, what is it? Bahunam janmanamate, after many, many births, jnanavamam papadati, one with knowledge, he surrenders unto me, Vasudeva sarvam iti, because he realizes that Vasudeva is everything. Samahatma sudulabha, such a soul is very rare. Now, to come to this understanding, not just intellectually, but actually in a deeper way, in an experienced way, we have to follow a path. Just like in the morning I was speaking, this is my third lecture today, actually, that it's easy to say, Jesus loves me. It's also easy to say Krishna loves me. But on the way to love, to prema, there are a lot of steps, as it is explained in the verse we had today. Prabhupada quoted the same verse in our session of today. What is that verse? Here we go. Go. The tears rolled over the eyes of Narada as soon as he began to meditate on the lotus feet of the Lord. That means he's on this platform of Baba. As Prabhupada says, the word Baba is significant here. This Baba stage is attained after one has transcendental affection for the Lord. To attain transcendental affection for the Lord is not an easy thing. It's not an easy thing to love God. It's not a matter of just saying it, I love Jesus. It doesn't mean anything. At the same time, you're killing animals. Where's your love for Jesus? You say, I love God, but you're killing his sons. Well, what is your love? It's just words. It doesn't mean anything. Words, I mean, there was a time I had faith in words. Words mean nothing. But if you have actually prema for Krishna, premanjana churita bhakti lochanena, santaksa deva hridayeshu lokayanti, if you have actually love for God, deep love of God, that is because your eyes are anointed with the ointment of love. It is the highest stage of perfection. And you go there by this process, as it is described here in this book, in Srimad Bhagavatam, in the purport with Srila Prabhupada. This Bhava stage one reaches after Shraddha, or liking the Lord in order to increase one's. So there is a path given in our scriptures by Srila Rupa Goswami. How do we come to the point of love of God? It is a whole technology, spiritual technology. Ado Shraddha. In the beginning, there's faith, little faith. You go to the temple and you're sure you come back in one piece, right? We have a little faith. And so then from there, Tata Sadhu Sangha, one comes to the platform of Sadhu Sangha, one associates with devotees, leaving material association behind. Then, after Sadhu Sangha, Bhajana Kriya. We chant and we hear the holy name, we hear scripture, we are associating with Krishna through his name, through scripture, through devotional service, through so many things in devotional life. That then, after that Bhajana Kriya, if we do that, then we come to anatta nivritti, that all sins are forgiven and eradicated. So I was talking in the morning about this situation, the anatta nivritti, and we become free from sin, which is considered, for example, in Christianity, the highest goal of life. That's not true. It's just a station on the path. After anatta nivritti, then all the way to prema are still more steps, 4 more steps. What happens if we become free from all sin? Where do we go? Anybody has an answer? What do you think? Where do we go if we are free from all sins? You go to heaven. Not to the spiritual world, you go to heaven. If you have no sins anymore, you can go to heaven, but you cannot go back to the spiritual world. If you want to go back to Krishna in the spiritual world, you have to have pure love for him. You see this point? Huh?
No, good.
What did you say?
Nothing, it's okay.
You have to have pure love for Krishna. That brings you actually to Krishna. So in some of our religions, we are taught, that to become free from sin is everything. Christians always say, Jesus died for my sin. Well, actually, you know, if you chant the Hare Krishna mantra, according to our Siddhanta, even one time sincerely, you're free from all sin. Even one time, you come to anatta nivritti. And then after anatta nivritti, then the whole transcendental part starts, what actually brings you to the spiritual world, gradually. Namely, the first step is, after anatta nivritti, firm faith. That means faith that is realized, that is based on experience, right? Like when you learn to drive a car, first is the theory. But even if you drive your car in your head, in your understanding, you still have to experience, you have to fly many hours before you can actually fly a plane. The experience is there. You experience actually the nature of being free from all offenses. So this is real faith. Just like, for example, there are three ways of knowing. One is called pratyaksha. For example, you see a beautiful painting in Rome, in the chapel, Sistine Chapel. There's a huge picture of Krishna on the ceiling with a long beard and surrounded by little boys. And he's holding out his finger to Adam. Adam is lying there in the Garden of Eden. So you can see this. There is a concept there of God as an old man. We know it is not real because Krishna is not old. Navayoganam Chai is not an old man. He's beautiful also. The person who is depicted as God is not very beautiful. He's overweight, he's obese. You look at the picture, you can clearly see there's an old man who's obese and is supposed to be God. But Krishna is young, eternally young, and he's extremely beautiful. He has all qualities in perfection, including beauty. And so from your eyes, you can see this is supposed to be God. And then maybe by philosophy, people explain to you there is God, there is Adam and all these things, but ultimately you have to come to the point of experiencing God. You have to come from pratyaksha, direct perception, to the next step of knowing, which is called anumana. You follow your mind by mental speculation. And then the next step is Shabda Brahma, by actually hearing from a perfect source. And then if we do this, if we actually hear from a perfect source and practice the instruction of a source, then we become realized. This is another type of pratyaksha. There are two types of pratyaksha. Pratyaksha means direct perception of the senses, but also pratyaksha in a higher sense means realization, direct perception of God himself. Therefore it says in our Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Raja Vidya, Raja Guyam. Raja Vidyam is the king of knowledge, Raja Guyam the greatest secret, Pavitam, most pure, Idam Uttamam, it is the highest, Pratyaksha Avagamam Dharmam, it is given direct perception of the self. You see, this is a second type of pratyaksha. Just like we have in this verse, Adur Shraddha. There's Shraddha there in the beginning, but there's Shraddha also at the threshold to entering the spiritual world. That is deeply realized Shraddha. It's a difference. There's a difference between the general pratyaksha, when a person looks at the moon, for example, at the sun. What does he see when he looks into the sun? He sees a pancake, very cool sunshine in the morning, very hot. At noon, red in the morning, red in the evening, cool at noon, hot in the noon, hot like hell. And so this is all pratyaksha. You feel through your senses, you're on the skin, you can experience the sun. And you see the sun is coming out of the ocean in the morning, reddish, in the evening, again reddish, at noon, white light. Then by the next stage, after Pratyaksha, these are the three ways of knowing according to Srila Jiva Goswami. After Pratyaksha, you actually come to the point of Anumana, means mental speculation. You follow the mind. Mental speculation means the speculation that comes out of the mind of scientists even. They can measure the sun, how far it is, and how bright it is, what the temperature is on the sun, so many things. You can get that with Anumana. By direct perception, Pratyaksha, you can get something more you get by investigation, by research. But in the ultimate issue, Krishna says, I spoke to Vivasvan this knowledge on the sun planet. Vivasvan is in the sun planet. So that information that is going on in the higher dimension of the sun planet, that you can get only from Shabda Brahma. From knowledge coming from Krishna himself, revealed in disciplic succession, and ultimately being realized by ourselves as well. So in the same way, the Shraddha in the beginning, that is more imperfect. It's kind of, there's some faith there, but not much. And then by Sadhusanga and Bhajana Kriya and Anatta Nivritti, gradually you come to the point of firm faith. In the beginning there's faith, Shraddha, and now we come to Nishta, firm faith. What happens when we have firm faith? Then comes Ruchi. We develop a taste for Krishna. So it becomes more, how do you say, intense. There's a saying in the Bible, that blessed are those who thirst for truth. Thirst for truth. You see, there's material thirst, that is called Maya Trishna. And then there's spiritual taste, Krishna Trishna. Trishna means taste. So here it said, then we come to the platform of taste, Ruchi. We're tasting Krishna. Krishna comes to us more and more. It becomes more a reality. Before it was theory, but after purification, it becomes reality, gradually, gradually, gradually. From there comes the next step, Ashakti, that we become free from detachment, we become free from all attachment of the material body. After that comes Bhava. It means emotions or affection for Krishna. And after that, Premanjana, Churita, Bhakti, pure love of God. So to come to the platform of love of God, that is actually the essence of human life. It's not the essence of human life to become free from sin and go to heaven. That is not the essence. Because even if you go to the heaven, what is this verse that Abrahma Bhuvana Loka Puna Avatino Arjuna Mam Petya to Kauntiya, that from the highest planet down to the lowest, they're all places of birth and death. But one who reaches my abode never comes back again. That's the point. That's our goal. The actual goal is we don't want to come back to Europe. We don't want to come back to India. We don't want to come back to Africa. We don't want anything to do with the material world. We want to swim in an ocean of loving affection for Krishna. That is the idea. So therefore, love of God is truly the highest in this equation. And that's exactly what Srila Prabhupada said. That, let me read this again, and then we can ask for some questions. The word bhava is significant here. Bhava is attained after one has transcendental affection for the Lord. First initial stage is called Shraddha or liking for the Lord. In order to increase that liking, one has to associate with pure devotees of the Lord. Just like one may say, well, I don't have association with pure devotees, but we have association with Srila Prabhupada. As soon as we read, as soon as we hear about Srila Prabhupada or listen to his lectures, we have actually the perfect association. The third stage is to practice the prescribed rules and regulations of devotional service. This will dissipate all sorts of misgivings and remove all personal deficiencies that hamper the progress in devotional life. And so by these processes we just described, we come to the position of anatta nivritti. We come free from sin. When all misgivings and personal deficiencies are removed, there's a standard faith in transcendental matter, and the taste for it increases in greater proportion. This stage leads to attraction, and after this there's bhava, or the prior stage of unalloyed love for God. All the above different stages are but different stages of development to the point of transcendental love. Then there's a strong feeling of separation, which leads to 8 different kinds of ecstasies. Tears from the eyes of the devotee is an automatic reaction, and because Sri Narayana Muni in his previous birth attained that stage very quickly, after his departure from home, it was quite possible for him to perceive the actual presence of the Lord, which he tangibly experienced by his developed spiritual senses without material attention. So he's on a very high platform that he, in his next life, he was already on the platform of Baba, and he could actually taste Krishna's transcendental, etc. And so we should never give up this process of Krishna consciousness, because we are on this way. It may take some time. It will take some time. You cannot expect from one moment to another to be in Baba, to shed tears, in transcendental love. This is ticking again, this ticking sound. Okay, it's gone. So Srila Prabhupada gives this example. One time he was in his room in Vrindavan, and there was a man, there was some commotion in the temple. Prabhupada sent his servant, Harikesh Prabhu, to find out what is the commotion. And he came back and said, there's a man in ecstasy of love of God, and he's rolling over the floor, shedding tears, and all the people dance around him, because finally they found somebody who was in ecstasy. And Prabhupada told him, you see this stick here, take the stick and beat him. Therefore, Prabhupada, I can't do that. How can I beat this man? He's in love of God. Prabhupada said, we'll see, let's test him. Let's see he's in love of God. So Harikesh, he went and started beating this man. All the people were protesting. And the man, he stood up and started cursing Harikesh and became very angry and ran out of the temple cursing and screaming. And Prabhupada laughed. He said, so what is his love of God? If he would be in love of God, he would say, thank you, Krishna. That's what I needed. I needed to be punished like that because I'd done many bad things. He wouldn't have complained. He would have accepted the suffering as another form of Krishna. That's our philosophy. He didn't. He was fake. He was fake news. He posed to be on the transcendental platform, but he was not. So in the same way, we shouldn't pose to be transcendentally very advanced. We just start Krishna consciousness, and we should start seriously and gradually come according to the instructions of the sages like Srila Rupa Goswami, from Shraddha, simple faith, to ultimately pure love of Godhead, Baba. We don't care for so much that sins are forgiven, because that's just one stepping stone on the path to pure love. Jesus also said, there are many things I could tell you, but you couldn't understand it. You see, he was preaching only 3 years. Srila Prabhupada preached at least 14 years or 12 years. And we could read his books. I mean, people at that time who could read, he had 12 disciples, and only Judas, who betrayed him, and Matthew, the man on the toll booth who was counting the money, the taxes for the Romans, he could read. The rest of it, they were fishers. I mean, if you go to the coast here in Kerala, and I'm right now in Tamil Nadu, and you try to explain spiritual life, the technique of spiritual life, to ordinary fishers, you won't be very successful. They can't understand you. Simple things they can understand. But they can't understand that there is a difference, for example, between the historical Jesus and the official church Jesus. These are 2 different things, actually. It has been established by scholars in Europe and America since 2 centuries. It is a difference. The official church Jesus. And our problem, if we cannot communicate with Christians, is because they hang on to the official church Jesus, which is an interpretation of Jesus. You see, when Krishna was speaking to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya said, did you understand my teaching? Lord Chaitanya didn't say anything. So then finally, Lord Chaitanya told him, I can understand the Vedanta Sutra very well. But by your teachings, you're actually covering the Vedanta Sutra. That's the point. By mental speculation, by religious constructs, theological constructs, you're actually covering the Vedanta Sutra just as much as in Western world, mundane religion is covering the historical Jesus by their theological constructs. And since the theological construct is just an outpouring of an individual person, his individual view, his opinion, therefore there are so many Jesuses, and there are so many congregations of Jesus, and they're fighting among each other because there are different concepts of Jesus. It's about concepts. It's not about the person Jesus himself, because Jesus and Krishna, they are together. Jesus is not Vishnu Tattva, he is Jiva Tattva, no doubt about it. He's one with God in love, one with God in interest, one with God in purpose, and so many things, but he's not God. Spiritual Master is one with God in one sense. He is a servant of God. He's the incarnation of the God's mercy, but he's not God. And you can see this even in the Bible. Jesus said, no one is greater than my Father. Somebody said to him, Master, you're good. And his immediate answer was, good is God alone. So he makes it perfectly clear that he's not God. This is just a concept that has arisen in due course of time. So, Prabhu, if you have any questions, let me stop here and let me know what you would like to know.
Thank you, Maharaj, for your nice class. Please, your question, raise your hand. But I have one question from the purport of Srila Prabhupada, where he said this bhava stage is attained after one has transcendental affection for the Lord. The first initial stage is called strada, or liking for the Supreme Lord. And in order to increase that liking, one has to associate with pure devotees of the Lord. So my question is, what if all the people a devotee is associating with are not pure devotees? How can he develop this strada?
Well, you see, whatever the situation may be, we do have Srila Prabhupada, we have Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. Prabhupada is not dead. You see, when Prabhupada, I give you an example, personal experience I had with Srila Prabhupada. When Srila Prabhupada was put into Samadhi, I had to keep the people back because the Indians are pushing and pushing. They wanted to see into the pit. And Prabhupada's body was being situated, covered with salt first, and then the stick was put on his head, a bamboo rod, long stick, and the earth, the grave was filled with earth, till the stick sticks out this much. First I couldn't understand, but then I could understand this. The stick was there to locate the body. That the ultimate, the statue of Srila Prabhupada, the murti of Srila Prabhupada is not. Here is Prabhupada on the left side, and here is the murti, right on top of Prabhupada. So when they pulled out the stick, I saw there was a little hole for one moment. And it fell in, of course. And then somebody made a little mound of earth, and then the carpenter came and made a little hut. And that was the first Samadhi of Srila Prabhupada for some time, till we erected the huge Samadhi. So I had the experience, Prabhu, in the next night, I looked in this hole, and actually this hole became like a chimney. There's something like what is it, 30 centimeters, 1 foot by 1 foot. And I was leaning on this chimney, and I looked down this chimney, and I saw Srila Prabhupada's body there. And all of a sudden, Srila Prabhupada came from the side in a very, very effulgent form. I could understand it was Prabhupada. He looked like Srila Prabhupada. But it was translucent. It was, how do you say, it was a transcendental form. Translucent. You could almost look through it. And he bent over the rim of that chimney on the other side, and he looked at me and said, they think that I'm dead. And I couldn't understand it. This is a true story. But in due course of time, when so many things happened in this world, I could understand that these things can only happen because people think Prabhupada is not here anymore. Prabhupada is here. In the morning class, I spoke this realization by Chandramoli Maharaj, who lives in the temple in one second. He lives in Chaupati, and he told me that at one stage he was reading, I think it was the Krishna book, and all of a sudden he reads a lot. So all of a sudden the whole atmosphere changed, and while he was reading loud, all of a sudden Prabhupada's voice came in, and Prabhupada read for him from the Krishna book for 10 minutes, 20 minutes. He said it was unreal. It was like listening to a tape recorder. So Prabhupada was there. He told us, I'm in these books. And he was there at that time. So Prabhupada is always there. And we are not alone at all. You may be not a disciple of Srila Prabhupada being second generation, but Prabhupada used to say that the grandfather is even more kind to his grandchildren than to his own children. And so every devotee can approach Srila Prabhupada because he's a Shiksha Guru of all of this, of all of us, for the next even 10,000 years. He's a Shiksha Guru. He's a manifestation of the Super Soul. And it is not that you are deprived of Prabhupada. You can approach Prabhupada. You can write him a letter, dear Srila Prabhupada, I'm in such a mess. Please give me some instruction. And he will. Just like Prabhupada told us at one stage when we inaugurated the temple in Vrindavan. He said, now if you have a problem, he said, just go to Nityananda. He said, that is the right address. He didn't say to us, go to Radhesham. He didn't say to us, go to Krishna Balaram. He said, you should go to Nityananda Prabhu, because Nityananda Prabhu is the manifestation of the Super Soul. And we are protected by the Super Soul. We have Srila Prabhupada's association in all times. And we have also Srila Prabhupada by associating with people who are connected with Srila Prabhupada due to service. So we are nobody's alone. Prabhupada also said he never had the impression that he was without spiritual master. The Bhakti Siddhanta was always with him wherever he would go. You know? So we can be happy. We are very happy people because we associated with a great soul, and we are still associating with a great soul by reading. I see you eating there. Still associated with a great soul simply by reading and hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. And by chanting Hare Krishna, we associate with Krishna himself. Hare Krishna. Any other question? And this little boy here, what is his name? There's a little boy here on the screen. I can see him. He's sitting on your lap. You have a white kind of chadar or something. And you have spectacles on your nose, just like myself. And then you have a little boy, and he just has a cracker there, I saw. Right? And he's eating something. So, what is his name, this little boy?
Chaitanya Prem, what's the name of your picking? I'm asking the father.
It's Sri Mayapur Chandra Das. Sri Mayapur Chandra.
I'm happy to meet him. Hello, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your blessings.
He's a good soul. If somebody becomes a child of one of our devotees, he's a great soul. He will go a long way.
Well, he's asking of you. And he's greeting you. Thank you very much.
Yes, Maharaj, our next question is from Afis. Afis, can you unmute and ask your question?
Hare Krishna. Well, this is Sahadev. I'm sorry, that's my son's name. I didn't realize that. Thank you for blessing our platform, Prabhuji. My question is in regards to pratyaksha, direct perception. Perception is as a result of our senses, like our eyes, our ears, our touch.
Yeah.
So I know you also explained that pratyaksha also means realization. So my question is, in the spiritual world, the living entities also have mind and intelligence. Now, when we drop this body here, do we go with this mind and intelligence that get polished to be spiritual, or the mind and intelligence we have in this body get dropped here, and then when we get to the spiritual world, there is a special spiritual mind and intelligence? That's my question. Thank you, Prabhu.
Let me show you. You see this? This is our body, our gross body, right? It's called Stula Sarira. Now comes, let me see, what do I have here? Okay, this is our mind, right? This is our intelligence. This is our ego. And this is the soul. So when we go into another body, or when we dream at night, what's it? The subtle body called Linga Sarira flies here and there. And therefore we experience sometimes that we are flying in a dream. There's mind, intelligence, false ego, and the soul. So wherever we go in the material world, from body to body, the gross body, called Stula Sarira, earth, water, fire, air, and ether, stays in the material world, in the particular planet where we just have been. And this takes off, the subtle body. Now in a dream, it becomes very clear that we are flying here and there. It means the soul is traveling in the subtle body, in the Stula Sarira, consisting of mind, intelligence, and false ego. Now, wherever the mind is at the time of death, the mind, there we go, in another body, this body, right? We're taking the mind and intelligence result, and you can read this in Bhagavad Gita. Let me just read it to you. In the 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, one second. Bhagavad Gita, there it is. Bhagavad Gita 15, maybe 10. The living entity just, one verse before. Oh.
Maharaj, what chapter of the Bhagavad Gita?
I'm coming. The living entity thus takes another gross body and obtains a certain type of ear, eye, tongue, nose, and sense of touch, which are grouped around the mind. Because the mind, wherever the mind goes at the time of death, there you go. The subtle body travels into another body. Now, if he commits suicide, for example, if he jumped from a roof, the subtle body also leaves the gross body, but his mind is not fixed on another body. His mind is fixed on the old body. So therefore he cannot take another body. He is a ghost. His mind, intelligence, false ego cannot take shelter in a new body. because he's fixed, artificially fixed to his old body. And because he cannot eat, he cannot sleep, you see, because for eating and sleeping, all these things, he cannot have sex, you need a gross body. Therefore, the ghost will try to enter into somebody else's body to eat and sleep and have sex. And we say he may be possessed by the devil. He's not possessed by a devil, it's just a living entity who left all of a sudden his gross body by accident or by murder or by suicide. Then he wanders around like a ghost. That's that situation. Now, if somebody goes to the spiritual world, then first of all, he gives up the gross body, then he gives up the subtle body in stages, the mind, and he gives up his intelligence, then he gives up his false ego, that I'm the body, and there's only the soul left. And that soul he pushes the soul towards God, and God comes and takes the soul. It takes two. We do our best, and Krishna does the rest. So now you have the answer how that works. You can do this everywhere. I can explain to you this simple setup. That this is a gross body, Stula Sarira, earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, false ego, and ultimately the soul traveling at night in this body or traveling at the time of death into another body. It's very simple, actually. All these things you can actually read in Bhagavad Gita. I'm just giving you a very simple graphical demonstration of this truth.
Thank you, Maharaj, for your ideology and of explanation. Is really nice. But from what you said, when the soul is not fixed on anybody, it becomes a ghost. What if people who did not commit suicide, but they are attached on the material world, their possessions, why don't they become ghosts? Because actually they're not fixed in anybody.
Because it's a simple thing. Dying is a gradual process to detach yourself from your body. Just like when you live in a house and the landlord says you have to move out. And you don't want to move out because you're attached to this body. But then the landlord comes again and again. And one day he says, I'm going to come now with a whole bunch of gundas and I beat you to death if you don't get out. Then you go. You give up all attachment. Or same example, if you live in a house that decays, first there's a hole in the roof, then rats are coming in, then this, that. So you lose your attachment to the body because the body more and more becomes deficient. And so time of death means you have given up all attachment to this body. And then automatically you go to another body. But if you jump from the roof, it doesn't mean you have given up the attachment to your body, you're still attached. You just feel miserable. And you see when you jump, you can stand there sometimes for an hour on the tower. And the mind is telling you jump. And the intelligence tells you don't do that. And so it goes back and forth till finally he jumps. I mean, it's very important to understand this. These are the senses, the gross body, and this is the mind. And you smell in the evening, there's pizza in the house, and you find the pizza in the fridge. And the mind tells you, the senses tell you, mind is telling you, come on, let's take a piece of pizza. The intelligence tells you don't do that. It's already late at night. Oh, come on, you can take a little piece. And the senses also are screaming, come on, let's eat, I'm very hungry. But the intelligence said, don't do that. That's not your pizza. That's a pizza of somebody else. In the same way, when you wake up in the morning, you want to get up early, you want to go to the university, you have to get up at 6 o'clock. So the bell rings early in the morning. What happens? Oh, the senses, this body, the senses say, come on, PRITHU Das. It's too early, you're tired. Mind says, yes, that's true, we are far too tired. Come on, PRITHU, sleep. Intelligence said, no, you have to get up to the university. So you can, the whole conflict that we have in ourselves, these two voices. One voice is really the mind and the senses in connection with each other. They're always like brothers and sisters, like twins. And then the intelligence, which is different from the mind and from the senses. You see, it's very easy to understand. Every time, shall I do it? You already ate so much on Sundays. And then when Mataji comes and says, now we're coming to the height of the feast, gulab jams. You're full up to here. Your intelligence tells you don't take gulab jams, they're full of sugar. But the senses say, come on, you can have at least one. And the mind says, yes, come on, it feels so good. Let's take some gulab jams. No, the intelligence says, don't do that. Very bad for you. But you listen to your mind and to your senses and you will eat it, although you're already filled up to your gills, like a fish has gills, you know. Up to your gills, you're filled up with pasada. You will do it because you're not listening to your intelligence, you listen to your mind and to your senses. So you can explain all this very easily by taking some cups out. This is, again, this is the mind, this is intelligence, this is false ego, and this is you, the soul. Hi, Krishna.
Thank you, Maharaj. Our next question is from Keshava Prabhu. So please unmute.
Okay, can have you heard now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Not only I can hear you.
Can you hear me? Is my voice coming through?
I want to see, yeah, I hear your voice and I see your face.
Cannot hear.
Yes, I can hear you.
Hare Krishna, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, Hare Krishna. Nice to see you again. I didn't know you were in South India. You're speaking something very nice that I've often thought about, how if somebody is ignorant of the reincarnation factor, then they're very much focused on revenge as acts of retribution. We can see that this is very common, like in the Muslim world, that they have these collective acts of vengeance. For example, if somebody is killed in Syria, then the people think that, oh, my brotherhood are being attacked elsewhere. So
And
it just goes back and forth.
Word about it. If you say one word about it of protest, then you have a bread knife in your back.
And it's as Mahatma Gandhi said, you know, if everybody is eye for an eye, eventually you make the whole world blind, you know?
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
So that was my observation. The second thing I wanted to ask was, you were talking about how destruction of the environment and all these different things are happening. So based on your time spent with Prabhupada and maybe what Prabhupada might have told you in a private conversation or something like that, what we're experiencing now with the coronavirus, can you say anything with regard to that? I mean, I know that Prabhupada did talk about the concepts are not clear, but there was mention of a possible third world war. And I'm wondering if you can speak of that when we see what's going on now in China and all these other countries. Is there anything clear?
Well, let's remember one thing. Let me tell you something from the Bible, because most of us come from a Christian background. There was the Pharaoh, the Egyptian Pharaoh, and there was Moses and thousands of people who were captured by the Egyptians to work as slaves in the kingdom of the Egyptians. And they were asking, Moses was asking the Pharaoh, please let the kids go, let them go. And he wouldn't let them go. So then one plague after the other appeared. First, the water of the Nile River turned into blood. That was the first thing. And people wouldn't listen. Then the next thing happened, that everybody had boils. So the whole body became full of boils. And people wouldn't listen. And then there came huge grasshoppers and they ate everything. There was a huge famine, again sent by God. And then there was a pandemic that there was some sort of a bug and many people died in a plague. So this was also sent by God in the same way as the corona is sent by God. There are different things, plagues appeared. And in there still wouldn't listen. Then Krishna killed every first child in a family. And so they had to, then the Pharaoh let them go. So we should understand all these things like the plague They're part of Krishna's plan. You know, Krishna, it is Krishna behind it, you know, to bring people to the understanding. I mean, according to our scriptures, holy name should be everywhere in every town and village. How can this happen unless the people are really kicked into the head by Krishna? You know, this is all Krishna kicking people into the head so that they finally wake up. You know, like the Pharaoh was kicked into his head by different things, and one of them was a plague. So First World War, well, you can go into world history, one war after the other, and still people don't learn the lessons. They don't see the connection that if you kill an animal, you will be killed. There is a sentence in by this, who said that, Tolstoy, the Russian sage Tolstoy, writer. He said, as long as there are slaughter fields, there will be, as long as there are slaughter houses, there will be slaughter fields.
Battlefields.
People can't see that because they have only the concept of one life. Then why do we suffer like this in a concentration camp, for example? And not just in a concentration camp. I mean, there have been wars and genocides and other things since the beginning of mankind. Krishna is punishing people, and people don't listen because they're stiff-necked. Somebody's stiff-necked, he doesn't want to bow down. So Krishna just kicks him to bow down. Ultimately, everybody has to bow down in front of death, even if you're even if you're President Trump, who's a certified idiot. You know, because he has so many things in his head, you know, which are not real. I don't want to use the word shit, but that's what it is. He had very unfavorable things to say about Africa. Why is it? Because it's in his head. Whatever you have in your head, you project on other people.
Prabhu is a pure devotee. Thank you, Maharaj, for your nice class, nice answer. Prabhu Nataraj, you unmute yourself. Do you have a question, please?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Please.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Please, Maharaj, I'm having some issue to be clarified. Now we are told that we are spirit souls, part and parcels of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna. And Lord Krishna is Satchidananda Vigraha. That means the living entities also are Satchidananda Vigraha in their minute state.
Yes.
So my question now is that if we are eternal with knowledge and bliss, why is it that now we have to be educated before we acquire knowledge?
Because we have fallen into, we may be Satchidananda, like somebody may be a rich man, like Mr. Trump. But in his next life, after presidency, he may end up in prison. Right? He may end up in prison. But somebody may be a very nice man, and all of a sudden he falls into a hole where the pigs have passed their excrements. So we have fallen from grace, we forgot everything. We have fallen in this ocean of material suffering. We forget in this ocean of forgetfulness, we forget of our transcendental nature. So when we are reclaimed to the transcendental stage, then we are back to Satchidananda. This is our spiritual body. Now we are covered by material. Our spiritual body is actually covered by material body. Just like when you go to the space station, you cover your body, your human body, with a space suit that you can exist in this atmosphere. But it's the same person. Then he goes out into the space station, he leaves the space suit behind. So in the same way, right now we are in this body covered with ignorance. We cannot remember anything. But that means our Satchit, doesn't mean our Satchitananda body is dead. It's just not manifested. You know, just like when you go to bed, you put a pajama on. When you get out of bed, you take the pajama off. Right? So it's just a temporary covering.
Thank you, Maharaj. We have a question from YouTube. Patricia is asking, when we finally made it to the spiritual world, are we still going to have the Paramatma within our hearts?
Well, we may not go there right away, but it may take some time. But by the end of the day, in this endeavor, there is no loss and no diminution. And so wherever we may be on our personal journey, experiencing so many things, good things, bad things, they're all part of the journey. Ultimately, we all will go there. We're already on the way. Not just we are just going there, we're on the way to Krishna. When we come to Krishna consciousness, when we chant and hear and worship, we're on the way to Krishna. And it's just a matter of, like I explained before to you guys, that it's like green mango. The green mango, you cannot stop a green mango from becoming a yellow mango. The process is automatic. So in the same way, you cannot stop the progression of a living entity to go back to the spiritual world if he actually follows the rules of devotional life. You know, he's advancing. Like now, my body is almost 75. I know a lot more about Krishna consciousness, even in terms of realization, than when I was a young devotee. As a young devotee, what did we know? I remember one man came from India and he gave us some, or one of our devotees came from India and he brought some tulsi leaves, tulsi seeds, and we planted them. And they grew, the tulsi was enormous, it grew to the ceiling within 3 months. And we were dancing around this tree, Yani Kani Chapapani Brahmachari Kani Cha. Then one man came from India and he said, why do you worship bamboo tree? I said, well, that's not a bamboo tree. He said, no, I'm from India, Prabhu, this is a bamboo tree. So we were young and unexperienced, we worshiped bamboo tree for half a year. And in the same way, we did so many crazy things when we came to Krishna consciousness. I remember there was some guy, I came to the shower one time, and it was smelly, and there was a devotee in the bathtub. His whole body was covered with something dark, and only the white eyes were looking out. And I say, what are you doing? I said, I'm taking a bath. He said, in what? He said, cow dung. I said, are you sure that's cow dung? I don't think that's cow dung. It smells very different than cow dung. No, it is cow dung. I said, are you sure? Yes, the farmer told me it's cow dung. I went to the farmer in the evening and picked up the milk. And I asked him, was that really cow dung? He said, cow dung, pig dung, it all goes into the same hole. So the motivation was good, you know, his intention was good. He wanted to purify his body. But he polluted the whole bathroom, the whole temple actually, by taking a bath in the dung of a pig. I mean, just the smell of it is impossible, you know. So in the beginning of Krishna consciousness, we don't know so much, but as time goes on, we are learning things, we get more knowledge, and ultimately we realize more things.
Thank you, Maharaj. Now, one last question from Ganga Prasad Prabhu. Ganga, please unmute.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, and our pranam.
I'm not Maharaj, I'm not Maharaj, I'm just a normal devotee. I'm just poor PRITHU Das, poor little PRITHU Das, nobody else. I'm just a poor boy.
All glories to Guru and Gauranga, all glories to Prabhu. Thank you very much for this informative lecture. And I am more grateful because like a comparative teaching. In the course of your lecture, you mentioned very vividly that if you know Krishna and you don't know Jesus, you are in ignorance.
Yeah, I can
Jesus and you don't know. and you don't know Krishna, you're in ignorance. So my question is this: what advice will you have for people who are preaching in an environment that is predominantly dominated by Christians, and they have intimidating influence in terms of wealth, in terms of their passion and their attack on anything that is not Christianity? Yes, from your statement is an expression of lack of knowledge. But
you see, they are Kanishta Adhikaris. And Kanishta Adhikaris you cannot change. You know, Kanishta Adhikaris don't have knowledge. You know, they're completely fixed in their dogma. That's all they know, Christian dogma. There's a difference between Christian dogma and Jesus. If they understand Jesus, they understand Krishna and vice versa. There's only one religion. That is love of God. You see, and that love you can experience everywhere if you are on that level of experience. You know, there's only one religion. There are not many religions. There's only one religion. That is to love God. That's the religion. Savai Pung Samparo Haro Dharma Yato Bhaktilat Hoksaji. It's one religion, and that is to love God. So when you meet Christians, you have to understand where is this person. If he's open-minded, then you can share with him. And if he's not open-minded, then what can you do? Prabhupada told us we should not disrupt the mind of people who have no knowledge. One should rather, Krishna says, one should rather engage them in the spirit of devotion. I remember one time I took a train from Dublin in Ireland, from Dublin to Cork. I was sitting alone in my uptight. And so all of a sudden the door opened and the man came in, he was a Christian, he was much older than myself. And he saw me chanting and he said, "What are you doing there?" I said, "I'm chanting the names of God." He said, "Young man, this will not help you. Unless you believe in the precious blood of Jesus, you cannot be saved. He died for your sins." And so immediately I could understand there's no way I can change his mind. There's no way, because he said, you know, he was brainwashed. And so I said to him, Krishna gave me the idea, I said to him, "I don't think that you're actually following Jesus." He said, "Why?" "I follow Jesus." I said, "All right, let me ask you a question. How much money you have in your pocket?" He said, "What does it have to do with our discussion?" I said, "How much money you have in your pocket?" I have a simple question. Look in the pocket. Come on. He looked in his pocket and said, €100. I said, "Do you believe that Jesus said, love your neighbor as yourself?" He said, "Yes." "You will practice that?" He said, "Yes." "All right, give me €50. Because your neighbor as yourself is 50-50.
We need the cash.
He said, "Hold on a minute." I said, "No. Love your neighbor as yourself is 50-50. You have €100 in your pocket, give me 50. And so then I heard him swallowing, like, I said, "All right, I give you 50. And I embraced him. I said, "You're really a good Christian." In this way, I didn't disturb him, but I engaged him in Krishna's service. So every time you meet somebody on the street like that, you say, "Let me ask you a question. Do you believe that Jesus said, love your neighbor as yourself?" "Yes, yes, I believe that." "Okay, then are you practicing that?" "Yes." "All right, how much money you have in your pocket?"
Demonstration.
Even Kadamba Kanana and Kavichandra Maharaj in the background that you have there, they're laughing about it.
They must transfer that love into cash. We need the money. Oh God, have mercy. Thank you, Maharaj, for your nice class. We appreciate it. Please, we ask all the devotees kindly unmute yourselves. Let's chant Hare Krishna to Prabhu for coming.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare.
The Prabhupada ki jai.
Hi.
So then I heard him swallowing. Embracing. I said, no, really. In this way, I didn't disturb him, but I engaged him in Krishna stuff. So anytime you meet somebody on the street like that, you say, let me ask you a question. You believe that Jesus said, love your neighbor as yourself? Yes, yes, I believe so.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna.